What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Where Stats Meet Instinct. I am your host, Sam. You can find me on Twitter at Straight A's. We have a lot of stuff to cover today. Usually, I try to pick one topic and we kind of roll with that. But there's a lot going on in spring training right now, so I'm going to cover a few different topics. We're going to kind of bounce around a little bit, but we're gonna cover a lot of different stuff. There's a lot of good stuff with the A's right now in spring training. We are less than 2 weeks from opening day. So at this point in spring training, I think you're kind of getting a fuller picture of, one, what the roster is going to look like, and two, if guys have actually made changes since last year and what those changes are. So one thing I'm going to start with today is I'm actually pretty optimistic about the pitching. Now, the A's threw a shutout today in spring training, but even before that, I was pretty optimistic about some of the stuff going on with the pitching staff, and we're going to get into that today. The first thing, man, Luis Severino. He has thrown twice in the World Baseball Classic. He is sitting 98 miles an hour with his four-seam fastball in the World Baseball Classic. Last year, he sat around 95. So that's a 3-mile-an-hour jump from last year. And it's not just the World Baseball Classic that he's done that in. He's also done that in his first outing in spring training, the one outing he had with the A's. His velocity was really good then, and he threw 3 shutout innings. And I kind of have to eat my words a little bit when it comes to Luis Severino before the season's even started. On my first episode here, I sat here and I said Luis Severino doesn't provide a ceiling. He provides a floor for this A's pitching staff. His role is going to be eat innings and basically provide stability so that those young guys can really turn into front of the rotation starters that are going to provide the ceiling for this A's pitching staff. It's only March, and I kind of feel like I need to change course a little bit on him. I think he's a guy that actually does provide a little bit more of a ceiling, and you've seen in these World Baseball Classic starts, it looks like he's turned back the clock. Like, that looked like Luis Severino from like 2019 when he was with the Yankees, when he was one of the best pitchers in baseball, and he was consistently throwing in the upper 90s. Now, the big question there is that sustainable? So the World Baseball Classic is a very different environment than the regular season, right? It's a lot more like a playoff environment. And on top of that, you're not going to go 100 pitches. You're not going to go 7 innings, right? So you're expecting to go 4 to 5 innings, max out at around 65 or 70 pitches. And that really allows you, combined with the adrenaline, to really go kind of max effort earlier in the game than you typically would in a regular season game, right? And the adrenaline obviously does something for Luis Severino. He's talked about it. It's kind of demonstrated in his performance. We remember opening day last year, big crowd, a lot of eyes on him, and he went out there and he threw 6 shutout innings against the Mariners, who ended up having one of the best offenses in baseball. Then you see him in both his World Baseball Classic starts, and he kind of looks the same. Like, he looks like a frontline starter. Now, I've watched every pitch of his World Baseball Classic outings. He's doing a couple things that he's probably not going to do in the regular season. Obviously, the first one is that velocity, 98 miles an hour. I do think there is something to that jump in velocity. It's not going to be 98 miles an hour during the regular season consistently. I think it's going to settle in somewhere in between that 95 and 98 mile an hour range, probably somewhere around 96, 96.5 is going to be his average fastball. And that is a big difference, right? That is a big difference compared to the 95 miles an hour he threw last year. But the 98 is probably not sustainable. I do think there's an element of just knowing you're only going to go 4 innings and really letting it eat for those 4 innings. When you might have to go 7 or 8 innings, you're leaving more in the tank. Now, another thing he's doing is he's basically throwing a reliever's arsenal during these World Baseball Classic starts. And what I mean by that is he's really leaning on the variations of the fastball and the sweeper, and that's it. He typically also throws a slider. He typically also throws a changeup. He's not really throwing those pitches at all. And this could be something that carries over into the regular season because his best pitches are his fastball and a sweeper. And he mixes in a cutter that's a variation of the fastball. He's got a sinker that's a variation of the fastball. But his 2 best pitches are fastball and sweeper. And in the World Baseball Classic, he's basically just exclusively throwing those. Now, it's not like he throws a ton of changeups or a ton of sliders during the regular season. Both of those pitches, I believe, are under 10% usage. Maybe the sliders a tick above 10% usage, but they're not used very often. He's like basically not throwing them at all in the World Baseball Classic, though. So I'm wondering if that's going to be something we see, if he really maybe condenses his arsenal to what he does best. And maybe he only focuses on those pitches during the regular season, and maybe you see even less of the changeup and even less of the slider than what you saw last year. The other thing about Severino, too, is, and this has been the talking point on him, clearly the minor league ballpark thing is something that affected him at the beginning of last year. And you are not going to have the same adrenaline pitching in Sacramento that you are in the World Baseball Classic when you have 50,000 fans screaming with every pitch. You're just not. And adrenaline isn't something you can recreate in a day game in June in the middle of the season when you're on start number 15 of the year. It's just a different environment. And can Severino be successful without that adrenaline? Now, he's clearly more successful with the adrenaline. And I think that is a good thing. I think that bodes well for if the A's are in a playoff race and there's some really meaningful starts down the stretch, that he can be a guy that performs well in those stretches and in those big spots. But we have to see if he's going to be able to perform in Sacramento. Sacramento is what it is. It's where the A's are playing. The environment is what it is. You're not going to fit 30,000 fans in there. You're going to fit 10,000 fans. And it's going to be a different environment. And can that stuff sustain in that small, in the more intimate environment? That remains to be seen a little bit. I think it was a little overblown last year, his struggles at home. I think he got a little lucky on the road, a little unlucky at home. I do think that was part of it. But we'll see going into this year if he's able to take some of these things he's doing well in the World Baseball Classic and carry that into a different environment that he's traditionally struggled a little bit in. Another thing with him is his command was really good in these outings. I don't think he walked a guy in the World Baseball Classic. Last year when he was struggling, he was really kind of nitpicking around the zone. And he had a lot of issues, not necessarily with walks, but with falling behind guys and then getting hit when he was behind in the count. Now, the World Baseball Classic, one thing that I think is sustainable in whatever environment you're in is that command that he showed. He was just attacking hitters the whole time. And this led to more strikeouts along with the increased velocity. It led to less free passes. Now, he was still giving up the hits and he was still giving up the home runs. I think he gave up, it was 3 hits in his first game, 6 hits in the last one, 5 hits in the last one maybe. So he still gave up 8 hits and I think 7 in a third innings. And he still gave up 2 home runs during the World Baseball Classic. But if you're not giving up free passes and you're striking guys out, that allows you to work around those hits and it allows those home runs to be more likely to be solo home runs, and that's going to lead to less runs. Like, I don't think this is going to be an absolute shutdown guy, even with the increased velocity and even with the increased command. He's still going to give up his hits and he's going to give up his home runs, but if he can limit those free passes like he did in the World Baseball Classic, I think that bodes really, really well for the A's moving forward. The other outing that's got me super optimistic is Jacob Lopez. Now, again, in my first episode, I talked about Jacob Lopez. He reminds me of prime Sean Manaea. And a lot of people are going to look at his velocity and see 91 miles an hour on the fastball and consider him kind of a soft tosser. And while technically, yes, he doesn't throw that hard, watch how the hitters react to his fastball. They are more late on his fastball than any other fastball in the A's staff, right? Guys time up Luis Morales' fastball and Luis Severino's fastball significantly more than they time up the 90-mile-an-hour fastball that Jacob Lopez has. And what that tells me is the perceived velocity on that pitch is significantly higher than the 90, 91 miles an hour that it shows on the radar gun. Now, I said the only real question I had about him going into this season was health. His first outing, he was shaking off the rust a little bit. His last outing, he threw 4 no-hit innings with 7 strikeouts. And after the game, he was talking in the article that Martin Gallegos wrote, he was talking about how he felt like he was basically back to where he was before the injury for the first time. Now, I have no more questions about it. Like, this is a guy I think could pitch near the front of the rotation or at least in the middle of the rotation with the stuff he currently has as long as he's healthy. And he went out there and he showed he's healthy and he showed that the command was back. He was pinpoint. He was striking guys out. He was missing bats. Like, this is a guy with a significantly higher ceiling than people think. And it's just because the velocity is not there and he's never really been a big-time prospect. But when hitters tell you who a pitcher is, you need to listen to him. And hitters tell you, like, they do not pick up the baseball out of this guy's hand very well. And that showed last year. Like, he had probably the most dominant stretch of any Ace starter during the middle of last season. And if he hadn't gotten hurt in his last outing and kind of had that blow up, he would have had really good numbers at the end of the year. Now, again, he's back. He's healthy. I expect him to be one of the A's better starters this year. And again, like I said, that's the only question I had was health. Everything else I feel good about. He is going to compete. He's got a fastball that might as well be 99 miles an hour. The way hitters react to it, it might as well be 99 miles an hour. And when he's landing his slider, he's landing his changeup, he's got that cutter, he's got elite extension, and he's got a weird arm slot that you don't see very often. Like, this guy could be exactly what Sean Manaea was in his prime for the A's, which is one of the best pitchers on a playoff team. He has that type of stuff. If this guy was drafted in the first round like Sean Manaea, people would be writing him up as like the breakout candidate of this season. So I'm super excited about Jacob Lopez. An absolute steal in that trade last year. He is a guy that I'm really, really excited about. Now, Sevy and Lopez throwing like that really changes the outlook for the team this year, in my opinion. As in, if those guys can be legitimate number 3 starters in the big leagues, and what I mean by that is like pitch to the quality that a number 3 starter on a playoff team is. It doesn't mean like literally they're the number 3 starter in this rotation. They're probably a little better than that in this rotation, but can they pitch as well as a quality number 3 starter on a playoff team? I think both of these guys might have a chance to do that. And I've been saying that about Jacob Lopez. I have not been saying that about Luis Severino. But man, he looked like a guy in the World Baseball Classic, and Lopez really, really looked good in his spring training outing, and that was really good to see. On top of that, he went 4 innings, right? So he gets 2 more starts. He bumps his pitch count up into around 80, and he's good to go in the regular season. I'm really excited about him. Now, today the A's threw a shutout. I don't think that was necessarily like their best pitch outing of the spring. Jeffrey Springs threw well, but he did allow 6 base runners in 4 2/3 innings. He's a guy, he just kind of drives me crazy. He throws 90-91 like Jacob Lopez, but it's not the same 90-91 as Jacob Lopez. And it just seems like he is in 2-1 and 3-2 counts to like every hitter. And you would just think for a guy that is low 90s, that relies on a changeup, he would be getting ahead in counts more frequently. And he just doesn't really do that. Now, to his credit, he doesn't get hit that hard for a guy that throws with that velo, that relies on a changeup, that's constantly behind in the count. You would think a guy like that that's behind in the count would have an ERA around 9, and he obviously still finds a way to miss bats, and he finds a way to make enough big pitches when he needs to. I do want to see him, though, just get ahead in counts more. Because if this guy gets ahead in counts more, I think he could be really good, like the Jeffrey Springs of a few years ago. But I haven't really seen anything in this spring training that makes me think any differently about him. I think he provides a floor. I don't really think he provides much of a ceiling for this A's pitching staff. But if he can stay healthy, if he can eat innings, then he can still be a valuable part of this pitching staff. Now, one thing you're going to say is like, hey, Sam, why are you so optimistic about this pitching? They have a 5.96 ERA at this point in spring training. I have 2 notes on that. One is you're basically pitching in a Coors Field-like environment every game in spring training in Arizona. So the pitching numbers are going to be inflated. They just are. It's just kind of the environment that spring training provides. The other thing, I'm going to read you the list of the 3 pitching staffs with the worst spring training ERAs to this point. We have the Boston Red Sox, we have the Cincinnati Reds, and with the worst ERA of any team in spring training in Major League Baseball, we have the Seattle Mariners. So there is a legitimate argument that outside of the Dodgers, these are the 3 best starting rotations in Major League Baseball going into the season. What that tells me, it's probably not the front-end guys getting hit. It's probably their minor leaguers getting hit. Or it's just a situation where guys that are guaranteed roster spots are really working on things, not trying to show too much to hitters in spring training. Regardless, whatever the reason might be, I don't think anyone has any serious questions about the Boston Red Sox with Garrett Crochet and Ranger Suarez and Sonny Gray in their rotation. I don't think anyone has any serious questions about the Cincinnati Reds with Hunter Green and Abbott and all those guys that they have that I'm kind of blanking on right now. This is an A's podcast. This isn't a Reds podcast. Give me a break. So I don't think anyone has any questions about the Reds starting rotation. And then Seattle, we've all seen Seattle. Seattle, I think there's actually an argument that they have the best rotation in baseball, even better than the Dodgers. And they have the worst spring training ERA in Major League Baseball. So again, take the final ERA with a grain of salt. Watch the guys that are expected to be big-time performers for the team and watch what their stuff looks like. When you watch the A's through that lens, this spring training looks a lot better. Sevy has had a really good spring training. The stuff looks good. Jacob Lopez looks like he has bounced back from injury. Luis Morales had a good last start. The relievers that you really expect to be in the bullpen have thrown well, especially recently. I'm not too interested in their first few outings of the spring just because they're working on stuff. Guys come back at different points, all kinds of stuff like that. The relievers that we expect to be good relievers for this A's team have thrown well lately. Hogan Harris has thrown well. Scott Barlow's thrown well. Again, Scott Barlow was a guy I said on the last show, I don't see him as like a multi-inning reliever, but he threw an inning and 2/3 in that game after Jacob Lopez, and he threw really well. I think he had 4 strikeouts in 1 2/3 innings. And so maybe he is a guy that can throw multiple innings. But point is, when you look at this A's pitching staff, you say, who are the guys that are going to be on this pitching staff that we are expecting to be big contributors, and what does their stuff look like? It looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. Now, there's some concerns with guys like Springs and Savale, but I kind of just think that that's what those guys are. Like Savale, people are kind of freaking out about him getting hit in spring training. It's like that's who they signed. Like they signed a guy that's going to give up hits. The benefit of having Aaron Savale is he's going to provide innings and he's not going to give up a lot of free passes. So he's kind of going to settle into a back of the rotation number 5 starter type role. And then if a guy like one of these young guys like Gage Jump, who I'll talk about in a minute, is ready, then maybe you can move on from Savale. He's on a 1-year contract, or you can move him to the bullpen, whatever. But that's kind of who you sign. Like if you're expecting Aaron Savale to go in there and be 150 innings of a 3.5 ERA, that's just not what you're going to get. I think with Springs and Savale, it kind of just is who they are. And that's why I've been saying, like, they're the floor. They're there to provide innings. They're there to provide stability. These other guys are going to be the guys that really take this starting rotation to the next level. But overall, as we get closer to the season, I'm getting a little bit more and more and more optimistic about this A's pitching staff, despite what the ERA looks like. Now, the offense. I mean, this offense is kind of what we thought it was going to be based on spring training, or based on last year, what we thought they would do in spring training. Now, again, it's spring training. It's like playing every game in Coors Field. So these offensive numbers are going to be crazy inflated. But that doesn't mean this offense is bad. Now, I'm going to read you some stats here. The A's have hit 47 home runs in spring training. That's first in all of baseball. They have a 292 team average. That's second in all of baseball. They've scored 164 runs. That's second in all of baseball. They have an 875 OPS as a team. That is first in all of baseball. So they've basically been the best offense in all of baseball throughout spring training, which is pretty crazy because the first week of spring training, I think they hit like 3 home runs total. Now it feels like they hit a home run every other at bat. And it's not just 1 or 2 guys. It is literally everybody. Again, I don't think this is a huge deal. I think it's a really beneficial offensive environment. There's a lot of weird stuff that goes on in spring training with the pitching. But still, it's a fun thing to see them doing all this. Shea Langoliers has hit home runs. Tyler Soder. I mean, I could go through literally everyone on the roster, and I can say, hey, this guy's hitting really well right now because that's what the offense looks like. But again, offense hasn't done anything to change my mind about who they are. This is a team that has a chance to be a top 5 offense in baseball, and I think it's extremely likely they're a top 10 offense in baseball. If everything goes perfectly, this could be potentially the best offense in baseball. If Max Muncy shows in the regular season what he's shown in spring training, and center field will get figured out, but there's a good chance this is the best offense in all of baseball. So that's been really fun to see. One thing about this spring training that I don't want to take for granted is one thing I love about spring training is seeing prospects. And that's kind of my thing about spring training is I want to see the prospects go in, play with big leaguers, and perform well and show that they've made adjustments. And just getting to see them on a regular basis play against major league players is a lot of fun. If you're judging a spring training by how well the prospects have done, this is like an A+, like the highest grade you can possibly give a spring training performance, because every single one of these prospects that you wanted to see perform has not only performed, they've been like the best player on the field every time they've taken the field. And so I don't want that to be something that we as A's fans take for granted. Like, that's not normal. What these prospects are doing in spring training is not normal. Yes, you'll always have a prospect or two that really breaks out in spring training, but it just seems like all of them have. And that's something that's super, super exciting for the future. Like, you watch Henry Bolte play, he is an absolute freak athlete. And what he did this spring training was incredible. Now, all these guys have gotten reassigned to minor league camp. They're not making the opening day roster. I think that's the right thing to do with all of these guys. But having said that, that doesn't diminish the performances they've had in spring training. So let's start with Leo DeVries. I mean, the guy couldn't have done anything more in spring training. The guy is 19 years old. Most 19-year-olds are in their freshman or sophomore year of college just trying to get on the field. And he's a guy that is knocking on the door of the major leagues. And he's here in spring training facing quality major league pitching, and he's consistently performing against that pitching. Now, again, this guy is so polished at the plate for his age that it's consistently allowed him to perform at a high level against good competition. And he's continued to do that in spring training. I read an article today on MLB.com, and it's talking about Leo, and Mark Hotze's message for Leo is just get stronger. And this is kind of what I talked about before. He's not a guy that's going to hit a ball 450 feet this year. There's another prospect that I want to touch on that did that earlier, which was an absolute shocker. But Leo's not that guy right now. He's not this freak athlete. He's not an elite runner. He's not a big-time power guy at this point, but he maximizes his ability, and he is so polished at the plate, and he just looks like a guy that knows he is destined to be a very good major leaguer. You watch the Dominican team play in the World Baseball Classic, and he just looks like he would fit in with that group of just like, they take the field and they believe they're the best team on the planet. Leo looks like he would fit in perfectly with that. Like, you can tell there's nothing this kid doesn't think he can do, and that's really, really fun to see. He also looked good defensively at shortstop, which is kind of my biggest question about him going into spring training. I think I'm a little more optimistic that he can stay at short long term, which is a really big deal for this organization. But man, like, seeing a 19-year-old do that in spring training, that is not normal. Don't take that for granted. This kid, although the tools aren't off the charts, there's a really good chance of this guy being a really special player. And I think his floor is like as high as any prospect in baseball. Like, I think there's no doubt that this guy's a regular big leaguer. It's just what the ceiling is for him that's going to separate him. But he did a phenomenal job this spring, and it would not shock me if he's up late in the year just with how he's performed. Every single time he's been pushed a level that people don't know if he's ready for, he's gone to that level and he's performed. I expect him to do the same thing this year. Again, Henry Bolte, tools are off the charts. He's kind of the opposite of Leo, where the polish isn't quite there, but the tools are just like unbelievable. He is an elite runner. He has elite power. There's a lot of really good stuff going on with his game. And the performance that he had this year was really, really special in spring training. He consistently hit the ball as hard as anybody. He hit for power. He hit for average. He ran the bases. Like, this is a guy that has probably pushed his way to being the first call-up in the outfield this year when the A's need somebody at any of the three outfield positions. So that's really exciting for Henry Bolte. I'm very excited about his future. At the very least, he's going to be a super fun player to watch whenever he's in the big leagues, just because of those tools. He's going to do some stuff that other people just don't do. That's not normal. And that's going to make it really fun to tune into A's games to watch him play. Now, Gage Jump had a very good spring training as well. He didn't strike out as many guys as you would expect with this stuff. And Mark Hotze kind of mentioned this too, about he just needs to develop the ability to put away quality hitters a little bit better than he has. But, man, all the stuff is there. All the ingredients are there. He's a competitor. There was a velo jump with his fastball. He threw the ball really well in spring training. There's a chance he's one of their 5 best starters right now, but he's going to go down to AAA, get a few starts, and I think this is a guy that could be in their rotation for a majority of the year. Like, if this guy makes 20 starts this year in the big leagues, that wouldn't surprise me at all. And it was really good to see him go out there and have really, really good spring performances, especially being this close to the big leagues. Now, another guy I wanted to touch on, he's not a prospect. He's a minor league sign in free agency, was Michael Stefanik. So he was a guy that A's signed as a minor league free agent. He hit like 485 this spring. And this is something I've been saying this guy is going to do. So I've watched Michael Stefanik play since he was a freshman in college. So we played in the same college baseball conference. We're, I think, the same year or a year apart. So I've played against this guy probably more than I've played against anyone else in baseball. And I played 15 games against him. We'd play their team like 6 times a year. This was a guy, he was an NAIA second baseman who was always a very good college baseball player, but you kind of thought that that's all he was going to be, was a very good college baseball player, because the tools were never really there that typically get you noticed by major league organizations. Now, he is a guy who performed for 4 years, was a good defensive second baseman, did a lot of the baseball-y things that are kind of overlooked, but you just never thought he was going to get an opportunity at professional baseball. When he was done playing college baseball, he ended up signing a minor league deal as an undrafted free agent with the Angels. Now, typically when you sign as an undrafted free agent and you're a senior sign, so you're a little bit old already for entering into pro ball, if you have one slump, you are going to get released, and that's the last you're ever going to play of at least affiliated baseball. Now, this guy went into the minor leagues. He never slumped once, right? This is a guy I've been following since his very first at-bat in pro ball, since his very first at-bat in college, really. He has never slumped one time in his life. Like, legitimately, he has never slumped one time in his life. If he had, he wouldn't be a big leaguer. He would never have been a big leaguer. He has never slumped one time. So when the A's signed him, I said, hey, this guy's going to kill it in spring training. He's also going to go into the PCL, and he's going to hit like 350, which I still think he's going to do. He worked his way up through the Angels organization, added power, added a little speed, added a little physicality. He has never not hit. He's like a 320 career hitter in the minor leagues, and he has more career walks than strikeouts, and he's been in the big leagues each of the past 3 years. I'm not saying this guy's going to be a major impact guy for the A's this year, but what he is going to be is I think he's going to be a guy that absolutely dominates the PCL and is a guy that is going to get major league at-bats for the team this year. But I wanted to shout him out because, I mean, shoot, he hit almost 500 in spring training, which is crazy. But he was reassigned to minor league camp. I think he's going to be more of a utility guy in AAA, but this is a good player. Like, this is a good player. He has performed at every single level, and he's going to go into the PCL and he's going to hit 350. Like, you're going to look in June and you're going to be like, this guy's leading the PCL in hits. This guy's top 5 in the PCL in hitting. He's going to do that. Like, he's just going to. He always has. He probably always will hit. Now, getting to another guy in the A's organization that absolutely blew me away, we got to talk about Brayson Guidez. I hope I'm saying that correctly, but that's the first time I've ever said his name out loud. He started a game for the A's as an 18-year-old in spring training, which is pretty rare, and it's a pretty big vote of confidence from the A's that they would give him that opportunity to get a start in spring training with major league competition at that age. So he's a guy, he signed for a lot of money. He was a guy that signed, I think, for over $1 million out of Venezuela 2 years ago. Now, he was not one of the guys in the top 50 prospects, of the top 50 international prospects that were signed, but he signed for a bonus that was even more than a lot of the guys, especially at the back end of that top 50. So what that showed me at the time was like, hey, the A's think this guy is the caliber of one of these top 50 guys on this list, even though he's not on that list. Now, reading about him back then, he was a hit over power guy, meaning that he's expected to hit for average, but probably not a lot of power, and he's going to probably play a corner outfield spot. Now, that's a tough profile to make work. If you're a corner outfielder that's not going to hit for a ton of power, you have to hit for a super high average to be a viable big leaguer, right? Well, this guy went into the Dominican Summer League last year, and he raked the whole time, but he didn't hit for power, right? It looked exactly like what that scouting report said. This guy's hit over power, and he hit really, really well, showed a lot of polish. I don't want to compare him to Leo because Leo's like extremely polished. But when we think of like a polished young hitter like Leo DeVries, this guy kind of fit into that. Now, he got a start in spring training, and I was just like, okay, he's going to compete up there. They're just giving him a start because they're low on outfield options. He was facing Michael King, a guy that just signed for 3 years, $75 million. He hit a 450-foot home run, and he hit it 110.4 miles an hour. So 450 feet, I don't really care about that as much because it's Arizona. The ball flies in Arizona. A ball can travel a little bit further, and that can kind of make that look silly and stuff like that. But 110.4 miles an hour as an 18-year-old, that is real power. And that absolutely shocked me because you hear about an 18-year-old who's like 5'9" from the Dominican Republic. You're thinking like, hey, max exit velo is going to be around, I don't know, like 102, 103, something like that. I think I saw something on Twitter. I forgot who posted it, but it said like the average max exit velo for a 17-year-old is 102.7. So to hit a ball 110.4 miles an hour as an 18-year-old, that is real power. And that suggests this guy's not a hit over power guy. This guy's a hit and power guy, which completely changes the profile, right? Brett Rooker, for example, a guy who is either 29 or 30, I can't remember exactly how old he is, has hit 30 home runs in the big leagues for 3 straight years, is a guy that's known as one of the best power hitters in baseball. His highest max exit velo last year all season was 113. So that's only 2.5 miles an hour harder than what Grayson Guidez did when he hit that home run in spring training. That's something that kind of blew me away because an 18-year-old hitting the ball that hard is rare. An 18-year-old hitting the ball that hard in a Major League spring training game is rare. And an 18-year-old hitting a ball in a Major League spring training game that hard off of an established big leaguer that's going to pitch at the front of a rotation that might make the playoffs is absolutely wild. So this is a guy we really need to keep an eye on. I think he's going to start at Stockton, which would be a really aggressive assignment for an 18-year-old. We're spoiled because of what DeVries did last year, but 18 years old in Stockton is an extremely aggressive assignment. If this guy has that type of power and has that type of polish at the plate, like this guy should be a top 10 prospect in the A's organization. Like he should be because 18-year-olds don't hit the ball that hard. Leo doesn't hit the ball that hard. Right? I said Leo doesn't hit the ball 450 feet. This guy hit the ball 450 feet at a year younger than Leo DeVries. Now, I'm not saying he's Leo DeVries because Leo DeVries is a premium position. He's a shortstop. There's even more polish to Leo. There's so many things to like about Leo. He's a switch hitter too. But what this kid is doing, or what this kid did, is something that we all should take note of. So there's a lot to be optimistic about. Maybe it's just that we're getting close to opening day and I'm getting a little fired up for opening day. But there's a lot of good things happening in spring training. I like what I'm seeing from the pitching staff, especially the front end guys that we expect to carry this pitching staff. The offense is doing what this offense does. I think this offense is going to continue to hit. The young guys that were reassigned, it is disappointing that they're not going to be in Major League camp anymore. And it's disappointing they're not going to be on the opening day roster just from like an entertainment standpoint. It's the right thing to do from the A's perspective, but just from an entertainment standpoint, it's a bummer that we're not going to see them. But what they did is special. We should not take that for granted. I didn't even mention Tommy White, but I've mentioned him plenty of other times. The dude absolutely raked this spring training. And there's some other guys making names for themselves, right? Michael Stefanik talked about him. Grayson Guidez, 110.4 as an 18-year-old. That blew me away. That was the most shocking thing I've seen all of spring training. And I think that immediately jumps this guy up to a guy that should be mentioned as one of the top 10 prospects in the A's organization. So, man, I'm really excited. We are getting really close to opening day. There's a lot to look forward to with this team, guys. So I'm excited. Can't wait for opening day. Excited to continue to take this journey with you guys. Do me a favor, guys. Like and subscribe to this channel. There's a lot of great shows on here. All of us need more A's content. And so a subscribe from you guys, a comment, whatever it may be, that really does a lot for us. So continue to support, continue to help out, guys. That's what I got for you guys today. Again, it's been a great week of A spring training. Can't wait for another one. And then opening day is right around the corner. But that's it for tonight. I'm your host, Sam. This has been another episode of Where Stats Meet Instinct. Have a great day, guys. And as always, go A's.